Caitlin Clark from one end and Angel Reece. Which one is more interesting to you?
For me, there's talking points for them both, but piques my interest.
Yeah, it's not often I disagree with you, but I think you can't just have athletes doing twice the work for the same pay.
Compensation. Yeah.
One of the things that I reflect on is just how still little coverage that gets.
Unless it's legacy families, I don't think we cover it in the right way. How easy is it to make a decision to sack everybody, let alone a head coach?
Do you think that fans follow individual players now or teams?
I think all the girls are going to message me saying, I can't believe you said that.
Welcome to the Sixth Woman podcast, a look at the changing face of women's basketball across the globe. I'm Tony Hallam, and I want to welcome my co-host, Beza and White, who is certainly the cooler one amongst the two of us. And as my daughter and my wife have both said, I really want to be your best friend, Bez. So that's sort of the aim of the whole podcast exercise.
I take it. I'm okay with that. And I know that they probably say it as a joke, but this is a dynamic duo, and I think this is a special friendship, so I'm all for it.
Cool. Well, look, those who don't know Beza, she's a bit of an icon in terms of both her background, her media work, her love of fashion and representation of that, and also the crossovers between sport, fashion, culture, and so on. So welcome to being part of this.
I like that intro. That's nice. I appreciate it. Everywhere I go, can you just intro me?
I will.
I think that would work really well.
I'm Tony Hallam, and I'm great to be here.
Well, Tony, let me do the intro for you. And I want to start with how we met, which was through the WNBL season launch 2 years ago. And
3 years ago now.
3 years ago. See, we really are best friends. That's a decent-sized friendship. I was hosting, and you were introduced to me, and it was just the way you approached me, the conversation that you had. For me, it was the in-depth sort of understanding of the importance of women's basketball. That's what captured my attention about you and what made me want to know more about you. And the first thing I learned was that you were one of the main owners of the Boomers, which ended up being one of my favourite teams in the WNBL.
Well, we'll come back to that.
I'll keep it neutral. Outside of passion, for you, it's an understanding and knowledge of the game. Tony is an advocate for the athletes. He knows and understands the game as a whole, but just passionate about exploring and sharing his knowledge about women's basketball and sharing it with the world. So I think it's a great way to start.
That's very kind. It's a lovely place to start. And look, I think it's been such an amazing 3 to 4 years in women's basketball, and I think I was sort of reflecting on, if you go back to post the pandemic and really thinking through the Paris Olympics, the arrival through college basketball of Caitlin Clark, the year before Angel Reece, then the flow on into the WNBA and what's happened there, particularly with some of the younger talent. And then I've sort of, as you step back from the US, the whole change in the flow of the game, I mean in terms of opportunities for athletes, and probably the biggest change in that is the arrival of Unrivaled as a league, which has fundamentally shifted the opportunities for particularly the top 40 or 50 athletes in the world in women's basketball. And I think what I hope we can explore a bit, Bez, is the flow-on effects of those sorts of changes and maybe what the changes have been, but maybe also looking out a bit to the next 2 or 3 years of what does it mean for women's basketball in other parts of the world, but also what does it particularly mean for women's basketball in Australia? Because I think it's we've only just started to see some of those changes, and we'll talk a little bit later in the show about the new WNBL.
Absolutely.
But particularly, I think a place to start is the WNBA, which is sort of the front-end shop face of all of the changes. And tell me what strikes you most in the last 2 or 3 years as a passionate follower of women's basketball.
I think it's also, for me, about the next generation. And I think that stems from what we saw with college ball in the last few years, and my ear to the ground to young girls who are in their sort of teens who are watching these players and watching how they navigate their way through college and then into the WNBA. The passion it's inspired in them to reach for those heights, to want to play college basketball in America. I'd be really interested to know the stats of the intake of internationals in college basketball in the US, because there's a lot of young girls that I know that they see that as a genuine pathway now. into playing in the WNBA, as well as playing professionally here in Australia. And I know with the games that I'd come with you to the Boomers, you'd always be open to bringing the community to the game. And what was one of those? Changing something. What was the program that you ran where you had young girls come? I brought my Ali sisters along to it with the coaches and the players, but it gave young girls the opportunity to come and actually train.
Train with us.
Come train with us.
Yeah.
To train and play with the team and be inspired to put in the hours and put in the work. Look, I love the professional game, but I'm always interested in who's coming next and how they can be inspired to reach those heights.
Well, I think the interesting thing in that is that you, as a 14, 15-year-old girl or parents of a 14, 15-year-old girl, you actually could think now about having a career that pays well.
Yeah.
That it's still incredibly long odds to make it.
Mm.
But, US college has changed through the NIL process as well, which has changed another fundamental change of the game where players now in college can earn quite significant amounts of money. And so one of the questions for the professional game is whether they actually more want to be a college player than they necessarily want to become.
Or willing to stay in college longer.
Correct.
Yeah.
And, the men have been given a choice through the college to leave early. Women have not had that choice in the US college. They have to stay the 5 years to qualify to be a professional. But there's probably now a reluctance to leave within those 5 years because of the amount of NIL money that can be earned. Mm. And the other part, that will have a flow-on effect of players thinking about college as a first choice as opposed to in the past, maybe it was a choice, but maybe I'll go and turn pro at the age of 17, 18. But so there's a whole range of environmental factors to me that are changing in the world of women's basketball, and that's what I find really interesting. And I think if we look at the WNBA, let's maybe focus on that for a few minutes. We are going to see a game-shifting collective bargaining agreement come out. It's quite possible that there could be a lockout of players as they go through that negotiation. It's now a little bit of background to give people the context. So the players opted out of the current CBA, which they have the option to do at the end of this season. Over 80% of players in the current WNBA will be free agents in that process. But they can't join a team until the CBA is negotiated.
And how long does it usually take?
Well, it's a complicated process, the CBA, because you've got players' union, you've got the league, you've got club owners, you've got the players themselves. Mm. But it's only from the end of the season at the end of October, it's little more than 5 months until they're meant to go into training camp.
Yeah.
And in the normal course of events, you would normally have maybe half the players, 25% of the players who are free agents so you've got this almost logjam that may happen where you don't have a CBA, you've got 80% of the players who are free agents who are trying to work out where they're going to play, and it may not get resolved until the new year. So
how do you think that affects the start of a season when it's that much happening that's unknown?
Oh, I think it creates uncertainty right through the system. Athletes is a key part of it. But there are two, in the WNBA next year, there are 2 expansion teams as well. So we're trying to get a brand new team up and running in 2 new cities. They want the faces of their team to be out there from, well, not just day one, they want them out there now. They can't do that. They're difficult in terms of uncertainty around coaching, support staff, all those sorts of things. But also if you get into a prolonged labour dispute, it does erode the fans' faith in all parts of the game, organisationally. Yeah. And people's attention nowadays is very short. Mm. So all of this amazing TV ratings, sponsorship, commercial value of franchises that's been gained in the last 3 years, it's a really interesting inflection point about the risk of losing some of that momentum.
Which I think that momentum is so important. The fight for women's sport as a whole, on top of that payment and the pay us what you owe us movement that's occurred. I think if they lose momentum on that, or do you think if they lose momentum on that and they let this drag out longer, that it will have a negative impact on the game? or viewership of the game?
Well, if you look at other sports over the years, particularly in the US sports where there have been lockouts, there's been a flow-on negative effect in the short term. But the game's recovered, and I think it's an important time, and I think that the athletes at the moment would feel that they have leverage. And if your view is that women basketballers or female basketballers are undervalued commercially, they've got to use that leverage.
Yeah.
The risk is, baseball missed a whole season. Now, that's a bit of a scary thought that you wouldn't have that visibility. Look, I have little doubt that it'll be resolved. I just think it'll be messy because these things are messy. But also, it's a very interesting point at the moment where value of franchises, the two expansion teams paid in excess of $250 million to secure their franchise. Now, if you were here 5 years ago, you would have that doesn't
seem possible to have that kind.
The Los Angeles Lakers announced today a $150 million new practice facility. They've never had a practice facility.
Yeah.
So it is a bit of an arms race from an ownership perspective, which indicates there's value. But, it'll be a real pity, I think, to lose too much momentum.
Well, let's hope that doesn't occur.
So, but we'd be remiss, I think, if we reflect on changes, not to perhaps reflect on two particular athletes who represent different parts of the fan spectrum. Caitlin Clark from one end and Angel Reece from another perspective.
Yeah.
Which one is more interesting to you?
I always look at what impact someone's had or a player or an athlete's had both on and off the court. And as much as I think both of them are incredible players, I think Reece has had more of an impact on and off the court than Caitlin. But I think potentially Caitlin has had, and that could be for many reasons, which, we don't know if we've got enough time to go into, but she's had a huge impact globally on the game, which is very important and what helps obviously move the needle in the right direction. But looking at how Reece has navigated brand partnerships, a social life, red carpet events, social media, advocacy, as well as absolutely dominating on the court, to me, that's what piques my interest in a person. I think it's the same with athletes, male athletes. It's not just how they perform on the court, it's how they are in their fashion, where they end up doing music or acting, all the extracurricular activities that they do as well, or they take part in. Those things, it just shows you that there's more to that person other than just that sport. And I think there was a moment where Reece went to, I think we talked about it, the Met Gala.
The Met Gala,
she flew to the Met Gala and then she played a game the next day.
And she copped it because it was like, why aren't you focusing on basketball?
And I sit there and go, well, I know many other athletes, male, that have done the exact same thing and they don't cop it. Or athletes who are off dropping albums, male athletes who are trying to drop albums while they're supposed to be focusing on the season. Why is it any different when a female athlete is doing that? Is it to do with the fact that she's female? Is it to do with the fact that she's ethnic? Caitlin Clark's not ethnic. She's Caucasian American, but she also went to red carpet events. But yeah, so for me, it just, there's talking points for them both. But Reece just piques my interest.
Yeah, it's not often I disagree with you, but I think Angel Reece is a really fascinating brand, if you like.
Yeah.
Personality, a phenomenal rebounder. I just think Caitlin Clark is changed the way people view that women's basketball is played.
Yeah.
And the other bit is I think she is more directly responsible for the change in the economics.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Could you say that a franchise would be worth $250 million if Caitlin Clark had not come along? Well, I think it's analogous to Tiger Woods. We were talking about this before we got on the show around when he came on into the game of golf. Broadcast numbers were 4 times when he played in a tournament. And there was a lot of pushback on him inside the ropes around why is he getting all the attention. And I think it's very similar. There's a couple of very interesting books that have come out about Caitlin Clark, and not they're not authorised by her, that they're by really good solace journalists. And, the lack of support for the opportunity she presents is a really interesting conundrum, I think, for how you find this balance between, well, there's all these great players and she is a great player, but she's got a long way to go in terms of producing that year in, year out. But she's brought people to the game that...
She's a household name.
Yeah, I mean, I use an example of my niece who, for her 21st birthday in Melbourne, got a Indiana Fever top. I mean, could you imagine that 5 years ago?
5 years ago, definitely not.
Just wouldn't happen?
No. I don't think 5 years ago there was... I mean, look, there's definitely OGs of the game that I was always excited by, but I'm probably even more excited about those OGs of the game now than I was 5 years ago. So I think what she's been able to do is not only impact the game with the current set of players, but she's been able to impact the game by reintroducing you and reminding you of those OGs who are incredible, who originally paved the way for women's basketball.
Well, we've got a fan question later on this in another segment, but which we might bring you back to Angel Reece. But look, one of the other things I found interesting in the WNBA is the pay us what you owe us, and we won't go to that now. I think we'll focus more.
I think you need an entire podcast for
we
that.
need. I think it's more what the players are being asked to do.
Yeah.
Under the current CBA, which is they've gone from 27 games to I think 35 games last year, and now
45 or 47?
45. They're going to 50 arguably next season. Injury toll, the amount of players who are, the travel, even though they now have charter flights and so on, that's still, and I think that's another interesting dynamic because that has a flow-on effect to international leagues and who's prepared to play in the off-season. So this CBA that's coming up, it isn't just about being paid more.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be other things that have to go into the franchises and the support because you can't just have athletes doing twice the work for the same pay.
Compensation. Yeah.
And without the same support, more support. The Valkyries was an interesting story. So there's a great example of new franchise, makes the playoffs, has the most season ticket holders in the league, sells out every home game. Again, who would have thought that could have happened?
I never saw that happening.
Never saw that happening.
No, not specifically in women's basketball, selling out before it even starts as a brand new team, let alone even bringing on brand new teams. I didn't think that, even probably 3 years ago, I didn't think that it would have that much of an impact.
Well, they're here this year. You've got Portland and Toronto next year. Mm-hmm. You've got Detroit, Cleveland, Philadelphia by 2030. You're actually going to have, I'm trying to add that up, that 17 teams. It's probably going to be an even number, so let's say 18 teams. That's another 12 spots on every roster. The rosters are probably going to have to get enlarged. And so one of the interesting things about the Valkyries was the way they constructed their roster was they went and got almost exclusively international players. Mm. So seasoned Europeans, a couple of Australians. I think that's another thing that's going to happen is the pool of players will have to be drawn from, a little bit like the NBA will become more, which I think is more interesting as well. And if you're starting up a franchise, you don't necessarily, you just can't have 10 players straight out of college. Yeah. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what do you make of the Valkyries and their branding?
I mean, for me, and I think the first point that you said about bringing those international players, international names, if I think about the NBA, 5 of the top players that I can think of are all from the EuroLeague. So I think it's smart that the first thing that they did is bring international players. They're looking at the longevity of the team. They don't want a one and done season and then that's it. And
you've only got 2 weeks to pull your team together at the start anyway.
How long do you think these conversations were happening from when they thought, okay, coming from an owner of a team, how far ahead are you looking when it comes to your team and players? Are you thinking, okay, I'm going to talk to these players for this season, or are you talking about, I'm talking to these players for the next 2 seasons, next 3 seasons?
Well, I think look, what I learned was you need to determine what your philosophy is, because everyone's got their own recipe, and if you try to replicate what somebody else has, that's one way to do it. And sport can be a little bit like the sheep mentality, that they did that, so let's go and do that. I think in the Valkyries case, it was fascinating because they took a right-hand turn from everybody.
I don't think anyone expected it.
Particularly when, the first critique was they went and got a coach who was out of the NBA, assistant coach. They said, okay, we're going to actually accept having 4 or 5 top European players who are going to go and play for their countries in the middle of the season in the European Championships to qualify for the World Cup. So make that, how do you take 5 or 6 players? I mean, it was like ridiculous at the time. But what it showed was by taking experienced players, have a clear strategy, and then pull your team together in a way that it was really, it's a remarkable performance.
They're hoping that it helps nurture the next phase of their organisation over there. Because I don't think they're expecting these players just to come for a season. They're hoping that they come for the next 2 or 3 and become the core team or core makeup of their team.
Well, the interesting under the current CBA and the WNBA is if you draft somebody, you have their rights, I think it's for 4 years minimum. So they don't necessarily have to come and play for you. You've still got their rights. Yeah. So I think what's going to be interesting to follow then is what Portland and Toronto do. And the other thing that's just happened in the last few weeks is, of course, the short-lived patience around head coaches.
Yeah, two incidents we
can talk about, but let's start with the one that happened first, which was Noelle Quinn with Seattle. Yep. Been there 3-4 years, successful, winning record. Her entire coaching staff is sacked with her, and I think what you're seeing in this is what I would call some sharper professionalism. Now, whether that's a fair decision or not, my own view is you don't really know unless you're on the inside. But if owners and franchises and leagues are going to be more valuable, they're going to probably become more cutthroat about what front offices want to do. And I think I would critique New York Liberty. My own view would be what a very short-term decision to take on Sandy Brondello and one of her assistant coaches who happens to be her husband will clearly, I would have thought, not be there as well. She wins a championship under a year ago.
Yeah.
And she is let go 2 days after an injury-ravaged season. So it's not so much just that it happened. I think it's what's your philosophy then about – because I've got to imagine they have somebody lined up. You don't make a decision
like that without having had conversations.
I wouldn't have thought so.
I mean, you come from an organisational standpoint. How easy is it to make a decision to sack everybody, let alone a head coach?
Oh, well, you're really not in a position to do that in the Australian League, the WNBL. It's for a couple of reasons. One is that whether she was, I don't know whether Sandy was contracted for another season or not. You've got to pay out that contract.
Yeah.
You don't have the luxury of bringing in, support staff aren't highly paid. They're not. I'm talking in the Australian League. I think. And the power of the so-called front office, recruitment historically in the Australian Professional League has been more driven by the coach than by the front office. And that's the other shift I think you're seeing and you're going to see more of is that more like the NBA, the front office and the general manager will drive recruitment. Fraught with danger, I think, particularly if you don't have a head coach. So very interesting at the moment for Seattle and Liberty management. Which way do they go? Because they haven't got their head coach yet. And I would think some of the decisions were made that quickly because they want to get the head coach in place and work with them on that. But the scale of the WNBA now is very different to what you're able to do in the WNBL. But philosophically, you've got to figure out what's your strategy. And
you don't make a decision like that without having something in motion.
Sorry, you shouldn't. I wouldn't have thought so.
True.
But, sport is filled with short-term decision-making. I think, Sandy, I would imagine, will either do one of two things. She's the coach of the Opals through to the Los Angeles Olympics, so she has that. But she'll either take a break, which is one option, or there's 2 expansion teams, or Seattle, or maybe even another of the 10 of the other teams who maybe might be making decisions on their head coaches. She'll be in huge demand.
You know Sandy?
Mm-hmm.
Met her a few times. Yeah. How do you, without putting words in her mouth, how do you feel she would be reacting to this situation? Like what happens next for her?
Look, I don't know Sandy well, but my take on her is that she's super experienced.
Mm-hmm.
She's been a high-performing head coach in the WNBA for well over a decade. So won 2 championships at Phoenix, won a championship at the Liberty. Interestingly, in her 4 years in the Liberty, made the playoffs 4 times. So you just don't have that level of pedigree without one being able to read and be good with people. I would think she'd be taking stock and probably spending a bit of time with her family, and then sort of she'll have the phone, I would have thought, be ringing pretty high. I was about to say,
you feel like it's going to be long before people start calling?
Yeah, I think they've already called, and they. So I think that level of experience, it just isn't in women's basketball. So again, my other reflection would be, and again, I'm repeating what others have told me here, is that the ability to transition out of men's basketball coaching into women's basketball, it shouldn't be underestimated how difficult that is.
Yeah.
They're quite different in the way culture, dealing with athletes, structure, resources, many different things. Well, let's touch then maybe before we finish on the WNBA. And well, look, there's so much to talk about in the WNBA. We'll come back to that in future episodes. But the other one is just a bit of Aussie touch in this, because Sammy Whitcomb will be in the WNBA finals, which is a wonderful story. We also have Alana Smith, co-defensive player of the year, which is, again, an astonishing performance and then recognition. And then you've got terrific players like Jade Melbourne and Ezzy McBegor and Chloe Bibby, who's on the Indiana Fever roster and may end up in the championship game, even though she's injured at the moment. One of the things that I reflect on is just how still little coverage that gets.
Here in Australia?
In Australia, yeah. When not to compare directly, but Dyson Daniels was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, and what an amazing achievement and performance. But Alana Smith, I certainly haven't seen any coverage.
Yeah, no.
And so I think lots of progress has been made in the last little while, 4, 5, 10 years. But boy, we've got a long way to go.
I think it's something that I don't understand it, in a sense that I look at how Aussies cover sport in general. Australia is sports heavy. We love our sports. We're internationally recognised as being a sporting nation for a country that only has 26 million. But within our own country, the way we cover it and the impact that we have overseas, unless it's legacy families or legacy names, I don't think we cover it in the right way. And I don't know whether it's going to take a show dedicated, or like another channel that is dedicated to that, or spokespeople standing up and go, men and women, both from the athlete background and business background, saying, hey, let's talk about this more, let's cover it more. I'm not sure what it's going to take, but it disappoints me. It constantly disappoints me that they don't get that kind of coverage.
Look, I think it's a great topic for another one of our episodes, the ecosystem of how that works. What I would say is, in short, is if you look at the tectonic plate shifts that have happened in the leagues and the impact that's had on athlete movement, there's need for shifts in the infrastructure of media to reflect more the ability to cover, e.g. Alana Smith winning the Defensive Player of the Year. And I think it might be a really interesting topic to explore as to why that is and what the changes might need to be, and we might do that in a future episode. But for now, we're going to take a little bit of a break and hear from one of our partners.
Some of us have vaped around little brothers and sisters. These kids could be breathing toxic chemicals without them even knowing. I don't think it's worth it vaping at all.
Well, Bez, we're back. Thanks to our partners who support us. And look, I wanted to move into a section we're going to call Court Vision, which is a bit of a snapshot of various things that are happening around the world. I'm going to talk to you in a minute about Cheryl Reeves and what happened in that semi-final game. And, that was
Heated.
That was interesting. We'll come back to that. But we'd be remiss. It's a really interesting time for the WNBL in Australia. I'll call it the new WNBL, launches in later in October. New ownership, a mixture of Larry Kesselman and the Denholm family who've come in and taken ownership, resourcing it better, supported by the NBL infrastructure as well, which is interesting. Same 8 teams as last year, went through some interesting challenges. What are your hopes for the WNBL? Given you've been an avid follower.
I've been to a couple games.
Yeah, you've been to more than a couple
games.
Always gets courtside, does Beza?
I mean, what can I say? I've got friends in high places.
You do.
I think I know one of the things I really want to see is the support of the game from influential fans. When I go to the games, I always try and bring people to the games that not necessarily are already huge basketball fans. I try and take it from a standpoint of introducing people to the game, where I know they're already interested in the men's game, or they're just interested in the sport and they'll go to some of the great community events like King of the Court and Summer Jam and great, exciting community events. And I know you'll pay sometimes almost the same price to go see that. We have got a professional league here of women that play at an international level. Come and watch them. Come and support them.
Play at an amazing level.
Come and just experience the game. And I don't think they expect it to be as exciting as it is. I think there was a game I brought 2 of my friends to, I want to say 2 years ago, and they were, one, extremely grateful for the tickets. You'd given me some extra tickets. They absolutely loved it. One works in a marketing background. He's a huge social media following, and the other one's a rapper, musician, both super talented. And they love basketball in general, but they'd never been to a women's game. And they had said to me, if there's ever if there's an opportunity, we'd love to come again. Of course, they want to go courtside, understandably, but they loved it. They thought it was interesting. They just, really enjoyed the game. So for me, it's like, okay, what opportunities can I have to bring more people like that? And I think that comes down to the marketing.
Oh, no question. And
marketing teams have to figure out what are exciting ways that we can bring new eyes to the game. And the NBL does that with the Reebok seats. They do that with the corporate boxes and, all those sorts of functions that they have pre and post the game. WNBL does it, but I think they need to find the right way to partner with the right influential people. I don't necessarily want to say influencers, but influential people in Melbourne who can bring eyes to the game in a fun and exciting way. So, yeah.
Look, and there's a list 100 long as to what the new ownership needs to do. And I think one of the things we're going to have to be a bit careful of this season is expecting that they do it all in one go, because you sort of got to do this in bite-sized chunks. But I think my own view is the first thing to create is hope. And I think there's been some hope created through the change of ownership, and then deliver on some fundamental things. And for this season, I think one of the fundamentals is the broadcast, to get the broadcast right, to make it accessible, to start that cultural change of people, as you just talked about, seeing it for what it can be and what it is, rather than not even knowing that it's there. And it's interesting because there's been 3. We just spent a lot of time talking about the amazing transformation of the WNBA. Even though WNBA's got an amazing history going back 30 or 40 years, there's been really a transformation in the last, really since the hub that they went into, and in the middle of the pandemic. And there are 3 players this year who received awards in the WNBA. Well, I'll get to Sophie in a minute, but Veronica Burton, who played for Bendigo Spirit last year, was the most improved player in the WNBA. She started for the Valkyries. They made it to the playoffs. You've got Naz Hillman, who won 6th Woman of the Year.
I love Naz.
Part
I
of
think she's fantastic.
Amazing performance for the Atlanta Dream. And then Sophie Cunningham, who played in Melbourne 4 years ago. And Sophie has just gone off the charts in terms of coverage, social media, exposure, and just showing her full personality. And I think one of the opportunities for the WNBL is, what do you learn from that? And secondly, how do you make sure you get the talent that you can then follow these people as they because the
progress.
WNBA for some players may be a transitional thing. It might be to Europe, it might be to the WNBA, it might be to Unrivaled. And I just think there's some really interesting stories that come of that. And I really do hope that the new owners promote the Australian players, absolutely, but also the so-called import players, because both will have a talent pool that could end up being a great player in the WNBA. So, but we're going to do a lot more on the WNBA. We'll do a bit of a season review or pre-season look in the next couple of weeks, and we'll see how that goes. But it would have been remiss to not talk about that. Also, just quickly mention that the New Zealand League, the Taha'i League, kicked off in October, and it's interesting seeing the players that are going there. So for me, one of the interesting things in all of this is where are the players now going? And we'll talk more about China, for example, and Japan.
Expansion of those teams, international players.
Players and so on. So let's come back, but we're going to move into our next segment, which each week will be a couple of questions from fans. Got a fan question from you, from Emma, which is, Beza, do you think that fans follow individual players now or teams? And how has that changed?
I would say now people follow players more than they follow teams. That, in my opinion. And I think partly that's to do with the way brand deals have occurred, and also the amount of times players change teams. You see it when there's trade deadlines.
80% of the players are free agents, so
free agency period, like all those sorts of things. You see players, who'll be maybe in 3 different teams in 4 seasons, and the loyalty for you to stay with that one team when your favorite 1 or 2 players have changed to another team and then changed again. I think for this generation of sports fans, I think it's a lot harder for them to have loyalty to one team. When you think about the diehard fans of for my dad, my family in particular, AFL, they love all sports, but AFL, diehard Port, diehard Crows. They'll never change.
No.
And I think that's the same for those
but geography is part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're in Adelaide and...
in Melbourne, though, I know families that they will never change teams. But as they've
My children will never change teams, trust
me. Will you allow them to
No.
change? But even, as they see players that have changed in the NBA and in the WNBA, I think it's harder for them to keep to that one team with branding deals. The way marketing and branding is done this day and age, the budgets that are thrown at it with Nike and Adidas and these big campaigns, they make you fall in love with the player, not the team.
Second question from Emma for you is, who's your favourite player to currently watch in women's basketball? And now you're going to have to be careful here because you can only alienate the entire population of, and I know some of the athletes are good friends of yours.
Yeah. I love you all. I think I love watching Sabrina, which we've actually got a shoe over there. That's her second one. Yeah. I love watching her.
Why?
I like her game. In general, I also like players who've got good sportsmanship. And I think you can still show attitude, but have a good sportsmanship. I'm being so cautious with my words right now. I'll figure out another time to be more sassy. But I'm going to say I really enjoy watching Sabrina.
You want to know mine?
Tell me.
Well, I'm going to exclude anybody I have had any personal affinity to, because that way...
all the girls are going to message me saying, I can't believe you said that.
But look, I find I can't take my eyes off watching Caitlin Clark play.
Yeah.
And because she just plays the game in a way that is different. Yeah. And Diana Taurasi is an interesting documentary on her. If people are keen to... I would say I'm not a huge fan hadn't been a huge fan of hers. Watched a documentary which really showed her story. So I found her more interesting because she plays a little bit like Caitlin Clark. Oh, sorry, Caitlin Clark plays a little bit like her, I should say. But I just think Caitlin Clark has changed the way we think about it. And so she's fascinating to watch.
You touched on a documentary. I think that would be the other thing that I feel like is going to make a huge difference with women's basketball is telling the stories. More documentaries, more docu-series about who these players are. That storytelling element is what in 2025 people care about. Yeah. It's same with a regular brand. They don't necessarily care about the clothing line. They care about the story behind the designer and how they got to that position to create that brand. So I think with the team, with Valkyries and all these new teams that are coming up, it's the story around their team and their city and their state coming together.
And doing it well.
Yeah.
Not
doing it with integrity, doing it well,
yeah.
bringing the right players in. Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, look.
Wait, I've got a question for you.
Oh,
don't try and run away. Sorry. So, you know the Ali sisters.
I do. Hello.
And they always say hello. They always ask me how you are. And Naam has asked, why do you think it's taken so long for people to catch on with how good women's basketball really is?
We could do a whole podcast series on that, I think, just about.
You have 30 seconds now.
30 seconds. I think it's because of the athletes. And the more they're exposed to two things. One is that they're exposed from a media perspective, but two, the more they're supported in terms of the environment they're in, the better they get. And when you combine the two, if you can get people to watch it, which I think is the third piece of why things have changed. So I think women's college basketball is the thing that has changed.
How many viewers did they have for the finals? 17 million or 18 million?
More than the men.
18 million people.
And those that who, if you've been to the US and you understand US sport, US college sport, I think that brought more people to women's basketball, and then it's flowed on. And I hope that continues, because I think the growth is what we need.
I agree.
So that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for being, maybe a friend, maybe not my best friend, but we'll see how we go.
By the end of maybe this next season, I think we should just get best friend T-shirts.
Right, we might do that. You're going to leave us with a message for all of our listeners out there?
I am. Sixth Woman Basketball. If you want to support us, jump on our socials on Instagram at 6 Woman Basketball. We'll also be dropping these episodes on YouTube. We want to hear from you. Let us know what questions you have about women's basketball. It could be specific questions for Tony and I, or just statements you want to make about the game. And we'd love to hear it. We'll debate it, and we won't always agree.
Not always.
Always. But that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.